And he really knows his stuff. So he was introduced to me by Ryan here of Logical Position, saying he knows more about Google Analytics than anyone outside of Google has a right to know. So I think that was a fair going. Before we have Brian dive in, a little bit about Foretell and a little bit about our host, Greybox. My partner in crime, Brian, isn't here today. There's an emergency pulling him away, and he's reports a development shop here in Portland. Foretell, we are in an identity crisis, trying to describe succinctly what we do, and I'm going to give it a go. We talked about some new wording in a meeting today. We take a merchant's data and we organize it and enable, if you have an inside sales department or a customer support team, to really better understand and serve your customers because of our understanding and what we do with your catalog and your sales data and understanding the interaction of your customers with your catalog. We also do, and what our roots are in, are creating really great personalized product recommendations. We can also personalize the search experience. So we have this really amazing platform that allows you to do a lot with it. Our host is Greybox. About Greybox, and then I'll introduce Brian. Thank you.
See some familiar faces. I'm David Hughes. I'm the practice director for e-commerce here at Greybox. We're a digital technology consulting company. We've been here in this space for about 16 months. We host events like this usually several times a month. E-commerce Meetup is, I think, every other month at this point. But e-commerce is one of the things that we do at Greybox. We also have a digital marketing practice. We build content management system websites. We also have a web mobile application practice as well. But in the e-commerce vein, we work with a lot of mostly local e-commerce businesses like Wildfang, Fully, Fabric Depot on building and iterating what they're doing in the online space. And working with them both on like conversion optimization as well as site development, UX, UI design, as well as we do business operations consulting as well. So we're helping them on like back office systems and things like that. We also have a few clients on the Foretell platform we like a lot. She did not make me say that. Yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. It's good to see some familiar faces.
And full disclosure, we're partners with Logical Position as well. So, so this is our last meetup for the year, and we need to regroup and decide and figure out topics for 2018. I'm excited to have Brian here. Google Analytics to me is a Pandora's box. There's so much to know and understand, and the data is overwhelming, and I'm looking forward to learning more about this and to help better understand for my own purposes, but also interacting with our customers to be able to help them make sense of what it is that they're seeing as well. So Brian, thank you for coming tonight.
Cool. So thanks for having me here, guys. And Google Analytics is definitely a really fun overall platform to dive into, but can be a bit of a black hole. And sometimes you can discover that your precious data that you're leveraging actually isn't as correct as you thought it would be. So hopefully we can help you guys uncover some of the main problems that come across in Google Analytics in general and how to fix those and how to leverage that going into the holiday season. I am contractually obligated to tell you that this mustache is brought by Movember, prostate cancer awareness, so pass that on. So like I mentioned in an overview, just how to ensure the accuracy of Google Analytics and why it's important, most common Google Analytics mistakes, and what to do now to measure success during holiday season. So who am I? I'm the Director of Enterprise Search at Logical Position, so I manage kind of our larger client department. When I'm not in the office, I'm out hiking, biking, running, or playing with my dog. I don't dress her up ever, except for this picture, but she's exceptionally cute. I love Google Analytics, anything digital, essentially, except for those really spammy pop-ups or the emails that you get that really annoy you. But I love everything else outside of that digital. Logical Position, we are a digital marketing, performance-driven marketing agency. We are headquartered in Lake Oswego, Oregon, but we have 7 offices across the U.S. We work with a variety of clients from small local companies to multi-million-dollar brands, so everything in between. Some other just key attributes, we have 300 plus digital marketing specialists and creative service designers, and we're committed to transparency as one of our core values and performance, and we want a number of different ones. So, enough about me and us. Let's go into Google Analytics. So before diving into Google Analytics, I like to tell people, I'm sorry, also people on the other side of the pole, I'll kind of go back and forth every once in a while. The important part, whether you're using Google Analytics or any kind of analytics platform, is to make sure that you have clean and trusted data. In order to make marketing decisions or business decisions in general, you have to make sure that your decisions are based off data that's actually accurate for you. So I like to tell people to establish a source of truth, an analytics platform that you can trust that matches your internal systems within a percentage of error, and something that you can kind of benchmark your different marketing channels against. I like Google Analytics. I think it's the best option out there for marketing. If you're in web or some other areas, there's some other platforms that are do really well as well. Also important to have an analytics that allows segmentation. This really helps your marketing team understand not just the overall high level of how your marketing is doing, but some of the nitty-gritties. That comes into play in some of the conversations we'll have later, branded, non-branded, all sorts of stuff, email, campaigns, that fun stuff. Make sure you're tagging everything properly. So Google Analytics is limited by what data you feed it. So if you don't feed it all the information on your marketing channels, it's not going to be able to be used to its maximum capacity. So this comes, we'll talk about it later, adding tagging to other marketing sources that don't automatically have Google Analytics tagging to ensure that you can measure the success you have on those channels. And then just specifically around paid search, because that's more of my specialty, is just ensure that your paid search campaigns are separated out properly so that you can find out what's working and what needs to be improved. So now that we're going to clean data, we'll talk a little bit about Google Analytics, and later I'll dive a little bit more into the platform. Google gave us a pretty awesome option that we've been waiting for forever, which is a demo account. It's the Google Merchant account. So now if you ever want to get on and show somebody Google Analytics, you can do it without sacrificing your own data or trying to mark it up and figure out how to not show people other people's data. So just some quick definitions for everybody, just so we're all on the same page. There's channels and source mediums I want to run through real quick. So a lot of them are very apparent, so bear with me, but you might learn some in here. This is kind of the standard grouping. They're called channel groupings. They group different sources together in order to make it easier for you to visualize. So you have direct, it's pretty obvious, anyone that goes directly to your website. Referrals are anyone that clicks on a link on another site that leads to your site. A lot of people think, hey, if I'm on Yahoo and I type in the browser, logicalposition.com and click enter, that's a referral from Yahoo. It's actually not, because there's no link on the site, it's direct traffic. So that'll come into play later. Organic search are all of the non-paid listings and search engines. Paid search are all the paid listings and search engines. Social networks are automatically which ones Google tags out of the box from social. That's Facebook, Instagram. There are some that don't pop up into that. You'll see other advertising in the box. It's Google's catch-all of everything it doesn't know what it is. And display, which is any of the image ads around the display number. You can actually make your own custom ones. I didn't come over this, but in this session, but feel free to look into that later. It's really cool, and you can actually customize it to be what you want it to be. Maybe I should include that in there, but if you want to find this, go to Acquisition All Traffic. Sources are basically where the traffic is coming from, like the domains. So you have Google, Bing, ListTrack in this case is an email platform, and then mediums, which are what action they took to get there. CPCs are cost per click, so clicked on an ad. Email is email, organic clicks, again, refer, all that fun stuff. My favorite of all of these, just because I like knowing a little bit more information, is called source medium. So basically, source medium tells you the source and the medium. So instead of just having paid search, if I want to know if it's Google or Bing paid search, this is a great report for me to dive a little bit more into the details, but not get too crazy. So, I'm going to also step back and talk about, not a hot topic, but everyone, as soon as they say attribution, they're like, oh my gosh. But I just want to talk about the standard reporting attribution in Google Analytics. A lot of people don't realize this. In all of the reports you look at, except for the multi-channel funnels and the attribution section, it's 30-day last non-direct click is the attribution. So that means if we look at here, this is email would get full credit for this sale. These are multi-channel funnels, so these each are purchases. In this case, there's 2 interactions, and the last one gets credit. In this case, direct is the last one, so analytics is 30 days non-last direct, so actually social network and all of the reports will get credit for that sale. The reason is twofold. One, kind of direct traffic. The idea is if there's a campaign that happened before it, probably that drove the direct visit, so that's why they're trying to attribute it that way. The second actually way is more the technical way is there's a lot of problems with tracking when Google Analytics was first going into play. So there was problems with self-referral, so people not putting the code on all the pages of the site, and also problems with direct traffic just popping up all over the place on accident as people didn't install codes properly. So this was kind of a fail-safe that Google Analytics built into it to try to say, hey, if you do have any of these issues, then it's going to automatically fix that for you. So if you see a self-referral, so if you have a website where you're leading people to and there's a page that doesn't have Google Analytics tracking, you would see your own domain in here. Out of the box, if there's another interaction before it, Google's going to automatically attribute that back to the previous source. So, little odd yet fun fact that people miss, especially when they're looking at how Google Analytics is attributing value in the normal reports. And the last one is just a bonus secondary dimension. I don't know if you guys use this or how much you use Google Analytics. This is one of my favorite tools. It's just a drop down below the graph. You can actually add other attributes, one other attribute to most reports. In this case, I have my standard channel groupings, but then I've also added some of the more specific source mediums. So, great, this is paid search. What kind of paid search? It's a Google click, it's not a Bing click, and that fun stuff. Tagging channels for success. So going back to, in order to really evaluate all of your marketing, you really need to make sure that you're tagging everything with Google Analytics tagging. This can seem daunting at first. It's actually not. A lot of platforms automatically build in analytics tagging out of the box, adding onto everything. If they don't, you can always add it on. This is what Google Analytics tagging looks like. It's UTM tagging. It's ugly but pretty standardized, and you can always go to this URL, it'll be in this presentation, and click on it, and it'll give you you type in the campaign, you type in your site link that you're leading to, and it will generate an analytics code for you. This is really important so you can analyze the full picture and get all of that input in to make decisions. Also, another kind of side reason why it's important is email. If you don't tag your email, what does it show up in Google Analytics? Well, if it comes from Yahoo, chances are a referral from Yahoo. But other platforms, it actually can show as direct traffic. Many platforms, it shows as direct traffic. And going back to our last page, if it's direct traffic, what does Google Analytics do to it? Kind of ignores it and goes to the previous one. So if you ever are not tagging your emails and go to tag your emails and wonder why all sources on the website just dropped by 25%, but your revenue is exactly the same, it's because this was happening to you before and you just didn't realize it. So it's a thing to keep in mind. Tag your email, but make sure once you do it, a lot of the data beforehand is probably going to be a little bit messed up, and don't be surprised when other channels drop. You can always see there's reports that show you the full value of where Google or any of the sources are on the path, and that's areas if you do ever do that, you can still say, okay, I know now it's attributed differently because email is getting credit, but is Google organic, if it was on the path anywhere, has that changed in value, or is it the same amount and I'm just getting this direct traffic change? So, sorry, any questions with that? I was doing that. Alright, so that's an importance, and just tag with segmentation. Yes.
Can you explain the difference of punctuation in your tagging for this track there? Email and email?
Yes, so this will actually be addressed later, but this is what happens when capitalization matters, punctuation matters. we'll call it an exact match, so it has to be exactly the same. Unless you set up custom rules in Google Analytics to look for capitalization and change the lowercase. So in this case, somebody tagged the list track, tagged an email one way and then shifted it to the other way. So technically it's not going to aggregate these two into the same source of truth. So tagging is important. And then just make sure you track with segmentation in mind. So adding all of the appropriate campaigns, keywords, ad content, so that when you do want to dive in later, because there will be a point where you're like, man, which email was the one that did well? And then if you haven't tagged it appropriately, it's a nightmare because you literally can't figure out which one, and there's data that you need. So the more tagging the better, because you'll, worst case, just ignore it. Best case, you'll actually use it as well. So also a bonus difference in vendor reporting versus Google Analytics. So this is also a weird hot topic, but I figured I would go over the difference between Pixel and Google Analytics attribution. So Pixel attribution is any platform like Google AdWords, affiliates, anyone that has an actual code that they place on your site, and when the user clicks on their advertisement, it drops a cookie on the computer, and then once they go past that code, it fires off a conversion, right? You'll get this with most platforms come with their own pixel on how they measure everything. One of the tricky things that is between pixels and Google Analytics is you'll notice they don't match up. And the reason is pixels are notoriously greedy. It's not a bad thing, but basically they don't look at any of the other touch points that happen in an interaction that led to a sale. So each one will take full credit for a sale. Let's say you have an AdWords click, you have an affiliate click, and you have a remarketing click. All three of those, if you're using different vendors, will actually take full credit for a sale. And you'll get to a point where we call monopoly money. So it looks like you're doing really good in all these sources, but if you add all of them together, for some reason it's actually more than your website did. We do actually one company that subtracted all of the difference out of direct traffic. So sometimes the direct traffic will be negative because all of the other vendors were reporting all this money that had to be accounted for. So is it bad? No, it's not bad, it's just different. So understand in these instances, last non-direct, email is getting credit, social is getting credit, paid search getting credit, organic, and email are getting credit. But if you're looking inside AdWords at the AdWords pixel, paid search is getting credit, paid search is getting credit, paid search is getting credit. So I think it's great because the different channels, it allows you to optimize them, knowing all the touch points that happen. As long as you're evaluating it in Google Analytics to make sure that finding out what the differences between those two are, understanding those differences, and if you're paying on a percentage of revenue, really understanding those differences, because it might change how much you're willing to pay, knowing that those numbers are going to be a lot higher probably than what you're seeing in analytics, and there's going to be a lot of crossover. Especially also important if you're using your marketing vendors that are taking, or Facebook that's taking full credit for view-through conversions, then it gets extra monopoly money and it's very confusing. So I always say evaluate the difference between the two, understand the difference between the two, and then design kind of a plan on how to give them value based on the difference between the two. One of the last kind of issues you can run into in Google Analytics in this first section is data sampling. So this is one that's not new, but it's recently more apparent than it used to be. So Google Analytics with non-premium members, it means if you're not paying 120 grand a year for Google Analytics Premium, which is a steal for that product, but it's definitely not for everybody. What they'll do is they'll actually start sampling your data if there's too much data, and the reason is, obviously every time people are pulling these free reports from Google Analytics, they have to pull their system and it costs them money. So and it takes a long time. If you're ever on an unsampled account, it can take forever to pull some of these reports. So what they do after a certain point, if they feel like they can extrapolate the appropriate data based on a data set, they'll actually let you know that they're doing that and calculate out. They use data sampling to calculate out certain areas. So this can happen if you're looking at a date range and you look at a longer date range and you've added up all of the date ranges in the longer date range and you notice that they don't add up to each other. It's because data sampling is probably happening. It can be critical when you're looking at very small level information like search query reports in AdWords or campaign reports or keyword reports in all the various channels, because you think if a keyword has 1 or 2 conversions, if the data sample has decided, hey, this was significant enough to say it should have more conversions, you can get very skewed performance levels. So, easy way to see this at the very top, next to the report name, you have a checkbox, little what used to be a little trusted store badge up there, and it shows, hey, if you hover over it, if it's green, it means it's based on 100% of the sessions. If it's yellow, it means it's probably sampled. I've started seeing reports where they do it yellow for some reason, and it still says 100%. So chances are it's sampled, but in that case, if you really want accurate data, just change the date ranges or try to figure out a different way to pull. So, most common mistakes. So we'll pop through each one of these. Clicks versus sessions, third-party shopping cart or incorrect referral attribution, messed up Google Analytics code, and other fixes by Napkin, which is a really awesome analytics company. So, really quick, this should have gone in the previous section, but make sure you compare Google Analytics versus your internal data. We're building a source of truth. Make sure the truth is the truth, that everything matches up appropriately. Otherwise, you could be banking all your money on something that actually is 30% off what you're actually doing because of your return policy, because of your frauds. Some common differences are offline or phone calls. I put a little asterisk next to all of these because you can actually fix these and get them accurate. It just takes a lot of work. For some things, call tracking can be easy. With some systems like CallRail, plug into Google Analytics. Returns take some additional uploading as well. Taxes and shipping is another big one people forget about that they can kind of not factor in. Fraud. I've had clients who are like 40% higher in Google Analytics than they're seeing in their Shopify account because they just had a lot of fraudulent conversions or transactions. And there's other types of things. But just kind of evaluate it. Rule of thumb is between 5 and 10% difference between your revenue is great. Getting exact tracking is very, very difficult and can cost you a lot of money. So just kind of keep in mind that usually 5 to 10% is great. If you're in the 30% off, that's probably problematic, or you need to adjust your evaluation of marketing sources based on that. So clicks versus sessions discrepancy, or what I call, oops, it's off here, but paid traffic incognito. So what happens when certain traffic sources are lost, when tracking is lost? Usually Google defaults to understanding that traffic came from somewhere and tries to figure out where that traffic came from. A classic example of this is in paid search. If you have redirecting links, what will happen is the user clicks on an ad, it might redirect to the proper page, so nothing changes in experience. But now that Google Analytics tagging probably got wiped off, and what has happened is Google knows it came from Google, but it doesn't know how it got there. So it automatically defaults to changing it to organic. So this happens with any sources where you have redirecting. Chances are, when the redirect happens, you'll lose the attribute or lose the session attribution for that source. So very common. I usually tell people if you go in the AdWords, because we'll start with that number one offender in this area is usually paid search because it's leading so much traffic and has so many different URLs. I tell people to start with acquisition, all traffic, AdWords campaigns. And at any point, if you see clicks, in this case, are higher than sessions, there should at least be one session per click. Otherwise, they're not registering. If you see egregious differences between the two, that's probably meaning that you're not tracking a lot of your clicks. Also with this one, this is Google's own account for their merchant center or their merchandising center. So the reason why their clicks and sessions are different is actually because they're running a lot of GSPs, Google Sponsored Promotions. So clicks in Google Sponsored Promotions are like email opens. So clicks to the site happen after that, but you might have 2,000 clicks email opens, but only like 5 or 6 clicks to the site. so that can cause some discrepancies between the two. My rule of thumb is you want to be somewhere around 5 to 10% above sessions than clicks. If you're below, chances are, if you're close, you're probably okay, but if you're not close, it's probably you're missing out or misattributing a lot of traffic. And the bummer of what happens is when somebody fixes that someday, one, paid search looks like a rock star because they just increased everything by 30%, and all of a sudden your SEO team gets fired because it looks like SEO just dropped by 25% in the same sense. So I always like to tell people, make sure you're not leaving, not free money, but free attribution on the table. And then also if you have any vendors, same deal, you can compare their clicks to their sessions, just make sure that those are matching up appropriately, otherwise they might have some tracking issues. So that's number one. The second one is a little bit more not complicated, it's just on the slide. Incorrect referral credit for sales. Typically, this happens when you have a third-party shopping cart, and there is a section where they go off your site to the shopping cart and then come back, right? So what happens in Google Analytics is they have a link on their site to your site, so that's a referral. And unless you use something called a referral exclusion, that will get full credit for your sale. PayPal is probably the #1 offender for this. You'll see PayPal getting all this credit for sales and the attribution in source media or in all the other reports, and you're just underreporting for other sources. So this used to be excruciatingly painful and took very smart people that are coders to fix probably, 2 or 3 years ago. But now actually is with Universal Analytics, it's very simple, it's baked within their system. You can actually tell it to ignore referrals, so it will just remove those entirely from the path. It only fixes it moving forward, it's not retroactive, but it can be a great way to fix third-party shopping carts or PayPal. Easiest way to catch is go into your favorite, whether it's, I would say go into source medium report and sort by revenue. If you're a revenue client, if you're not a revenue and your lead gen, sort by goal completions. And check whatever the top sources are. Chances are in the top 10 you'll probably have one of these guys staring in your face. Happens all the time. It is an easy thing to get rid of, and then you can attribute the sources properly. So how to fix it? In the admin section of the property, it's kind of the admin section, property section within that, tracking info, right here, and then you click on session settings and you click on referral exclusion. The reason why you click on session settings is think of your, I don't know why, somebody explained it to me, but it's like your session is 2 pieces of bread, and here's when they're on your site, and here's when they came back, and there's a meat in the middle, which is the, referral. So what you want to do is right now you have a sandwich, right? But in this case we want a bread sandwich, which doesn't make any sense. But what we're doing is we're taking the meat out of the sandwich and we're joining the 2 pieces of bread together. So basically now Google Analytics understands that was all the same session. However, if you don't change the session settings to recommended 4 hours, if that interaction for whatever took 30 minutes, what will happen is that will go bye-bye and that will all get lost. So when you don't change out PayPal, we've noticed, even though you think it wouldn't take more than 30 minutes, that it usually does cause a lot of tracking problems. So best practices are shift the session settings whenever you do a referral exclusion to 4 hours to ensure that you have data accuracy. One of the other ones is check your analytics code. You're surprised how many times you're like, man, nothing matches up, I'm having all these issues, and it's really your analytics code is either really old or unfortunately really messed up. So there's a really easy tool to help check this. It's called Google Tag Assistant. It's an extension for Chrome. You can just download it and then go to your website. Once it's installed, click on this little icon you can't see, and then it'll give you an analysis of all of your Google tags, so not just Google Analytics, but marketing, Google Tag Manager, any of the other tags you're using. There are other extensions that work really well for troubleshooting code. I would say this one probably works the best for Google products just because Google owns it. So they give a little bit more information. You can also do some cool stuff with verifying if dynamic remarketing attributes are set up appropriately and stuff like that. So just make sure, go into here, install it, just check. Happy smiley face is good. Red, frowny face is really bad, and then if you click on it, it'll give you more details, and at that point, I usually talk to a developer and say, red, unhappy, smiley face, please fix this for me. So, other fixes, and I'm giving 100% credit to an awesome analytics company called Napkin. They actually do GA premium installs for companies, for enterprise clients. They're awesome, great resource for anything having to do with analytics. They put me to shame. Their website is here, and this is their list of all the other things that when you're preparing for like a holiday season that you could do. We talked about referral exclusions. All of this stuff probably you can Google or reach out afterwards, and we'd be happy to let you know. Filtering internal traffic, filtering bot traffic, creating unfiltered views. Lowercase is a thing we talked about earlier with list track. So if you have stuff that's all different cases, this actually fixes it. Removing URL parameters, like all this stuff, integrating everything, best practices, is fantastic, and I would take 0% credit for that. So they do an awesome job, and I stole that from another presentation we did together. So, so what to do now? You've gone through your analytics, you set it up appropriately, you scrubbed through all the data. It seems like everything is working now. So we'll go over some of these in the next slide. The first one is just be comfortable your data is accurate, but investigating any discrepancies are funny business. The reason why I say that is analytics is not something that's, and like websites, sit it, forget it, it never changes. No problems ever arise. There's no one ever making changes to your site. Unless you are very, very small and make no changes ever to your website, chances are at some time in the future, some coder will accidentally change something that messes something up, or you'll have a new marketing source that does something to referrals, or you add a plugin to your site that has a little pop-up saying, don't leave us, and then all of a sudden, that changes up some of the attribution, does some wonky stuff. So if there ever is any weird stuff going on, I encourage people to recheck their analytics and make sure it matches up with their internal systems. Definitely, if you ever switch websites or platforms, make sure that you re-look through all your Google Analytics. But it's a thing that you want your source of truth to be accurate, so it's worth investing a little time every once in a while, just doing a couple of quick checks to make sure it all still matches up. We'll talk about year-over-year, month-on-month trends, first versus last, attribution, and new user versus new section. So, yes?
When you said be sure to check your Google Analytics when you change platforms, have you seen some platforms do a better job of this than others?
No, yes, there are ones that definitely do a better job, but every platform is different, and every code installation is different, and every really complicated e-commerce conversion tracking is different. They all have their weird space garbage in a different way, telling, dynamically pull stuff off of the website in a different type of style. Even within like Magento, there's a couple of different ways you can pull. So, just keeping that in mind, if you have installed your code for Shopify, it won't work for Magento because Shopify, you just enter the UA code in, UA number, and it automatically starts tracking everything for you. So just keep that in mind. If you do switch platforms, it's going to change, and you just want to make sure that you have updated. Cool. So look at trending data. So when you have your analytics set up appropriately, sometimes the painful part is I can't look at training data because I have no clean data. That's always unfortunate, but the nice news is from that point forward, you will have it. I would say annotate it. If you've ever used annotations, it's really handy because somebody will come in later and just be like, what happened here? I don't know. And then you have a little annotation, which is in the settings. They will know what happened. So if you do have some clear data, or you want to look at overall website, if you can't look at all the source mediums, it's still good to look at overall website trends. I like this option. You can do comparison date ranges, and a lot of people know about that. A lot of people forget about these, which is switching it to month, week, so you can look at trends overall and compare things. Also down here, you can actually click on all the source mediums or channels, and it will automatically filter the report and change it appropriately. I'm biased, but I like looking at revenue year over year to tell me how things are going in general. Look at session data just to see if there's anything weird with it, and conversion rates. Everybody has their favorite stuff. I will say that one metric by itself usually doesn't paint the full picture, especially if that metric's bounce rate. I have a thing against bounce rate, but just know that if it's the only metric you look at and it's the only one you're trending, there are a lot of problems with each metric if you don't look at other metrics together. So there's that. We don't really need to demo that one. It's pretty straightforward. Drivers versus closers report. Show of hands who's looked at the modeling comparison tool in Google Analytics. That guy. Cool. So basically what this does is it's a really awesome option. I forget how many years they added it ago, but we talked about last 30 non-direct being the standard attribution that Google Analytics offers, but they actually give a window into different models. And all different models are, and attribution is just a way for us to figure out how to determine what gets credit in a very complicated world where there's a lot of interactions. So all this is it gives you a number of models to compare to each other and try to understand your sources more. I like the, when attribution really became popular, everyone wanted to know the magic bullet of attribution. Like, oh my goodness, what's the right model to use? Last click, time decay, all this stuff, custom model. Now the thing is, if your demographic is 50-year-old males in the business lead gen area, you probably have a different attribution or a completely different interaction than if you're 14-year-old girls that you're selling fashion to. Because those use things completely different. You look at things, even display will work one way with somebody and view through conversions matter like crazy, and the other demographic doesn't use them at all. So the best explanation of this that I've gotten is it's really a comparison thing. Each model tells you a different piece of the puzzle. And when you compare pieces of puzzles, you can get a better overall vision for what's actually going on. So whether it's you choose last non-direct, first, time decay, that's up to you. I like last non-direct because all of the other platforms use last non-direct, so it's very easy to relate that into all of your marketing channels. However, do whatever you want in that sense. I would just encourage comparing. One of the things that I like to do is looking at first to last. So first interaction gives 100% credit to the first interaction in a series of interactions. Last non-direct is the standard attribution. One of the things is it can be dangerous or valuable looking at all this information because it is a black hole of, oh my goodness, what this and that. But if you figure out what's actually valuable down there, it can be very helpful, especially if you streamline it in a way you can view it. Understand that there's more value. So first to last tells you full credit to drivers. Last non-direct tells you full credit to closers. They both have value. Undervaluing one and overvaluing the other can always cause problems in any model you use. A great example of this is funnel fillers. So whether that's display, whether that's non-branded search, things that lead to sales and top of funnel, introduce people to your website, usually are not closers. And if you're looking at an entire closing model, you probably wouldn't value them very highly and might end up trimming them off. And what that does is future-wise, you lose that future revenue. In a short period it might work, but that you stop introducing people to your website, you stop getting those sales long-term. Think of it like a baseball pitcher. World Series, I feel like it's appropriate. If you gave full credit to the person that closed the game every time, no one would want normal pitchers, and all of the baseball teams would suck for the first 7 innings and have a fantastic finish, right? So it's kind of the thing. If you value one or the other, make sure that you're at least understanding the difference between the two. And then I encourage people in paid search specifically to look at the different channels that you have. So you have non-branded search, you have branded search. They interact differently. They have different functions. Understand the differences. You also have remarketing, right? You're following people around to try to close them. Understand that that's probably in different demographics is going to do different things. Sometimes it's an opener, sometimes it's a closer. It depends on what you have. Know that there are certain sources like affiliates, coupon sites. That can do great wonders for closing, but also understand, is the value in that touch point, what are we undervaluing, and try to determine, if people are, you're helping yourself or hurting yourself with that type of thing. And this is where you can at least see it in that information. So basically standard, you'll see this is very small, but hopefully you can see it. So standard, you'll have, when you click down here, a model comparison tool in the conversion section, it will show you one model, usually last click. You can pull down and change those and then actually compare up to 3 models next to each other. Most valuable or most missed part is select your conversion type. If you have a ton of goals in your account and you're an e-commerce person, you only want to look at e-commerce. Otherwise, you'll wonder why your conversion total is 1,300, but you only had 200 sales on your site, and it can get really confusing. And at the very end, you can play around with this too. I do conversions and value, and then look for the percentage differences. So if we were to look here, organic search, surprise, surprise, drives 30% more than it gets credit for, because it's, in this case, more of a driver than a closer. And the more you do this, the more you'll start finding certain channels operate very similarly, very typically. And you have your openers, it'll help you understand how to evaluate those channels based on your business goals, which is a whole nother discussion. So the difference between new users and new sessions. So this is actually a little bit complicated. I should have taken a picture of the scratch pad I used earlier to explain this. But basically, there are, if you're familiar at all with Google Analytics, there are 2 different, and I found a better way to explain this now, which I didn't bring with me. So there are 2 different, we were just having this conversation, 2 different types of interactions. You have session interactions, which is every time a person visits, they trigger a session, right? So a person can come back 4 times, and there's 4 sessions, but it's just one user. So users, there's actually the ability to see number of users in a time frame. And the nice thing with that is if you're looking for whether that visit was new, it's kind of helpful. But if you're talking about evaluating different channels to see where they're driving new to store, acquisition or new customers to your website, you really want to know if they're a new user on the site, not if they were a new session the first time, but when they came back and through remarketing, they're not a new session anymore. That's the second session. So if you were to look at that, we'll take an example. Let's see if actually...
Does that effectively mean that they were on the site, they left, they went somewhere else, and they came back in a relatively short period of time, like hours to days?
So yeah, it could be hours to days, it could be months. Let's take this person for example. If you want to get the nerdy technical explanation, user is 2 years defined, so you're in a user pool for 2 years once you've been to the site, unless you clear your cookies or any of the tracking drops off. Once they've been to your site, they're considered an existing user for a 2-year time period since the cookie was dropped. Session attribution is a little bit different. It's very similar, but the only difference is there's a couple of little complications, but just think of it probably the same way. So let's talk about this user right here.
Sorry.
Yes.
Have you ever looked at any stats of how many users are clearing their cache and cookies? You know how many?
I have, but it's been a while, and it's probably antiquated. That's not the real word. Whatever that word actually I was trying to use. I made it antiquated. We'll just go with that. It's probably very old. The stats I've looked at, I haven't. I know it's somewhere between insignificant and significant. Put it there. I would say it changes with Safari, what they've done, which doesn't necessarily affect AdWords data and analytics data as much because they've worked a couple workarounds to save their precious data. But any pixels, is anyone familiar with the Safari change that just happened? So look it up because I probably won't do justice. But anyway, Safari, what they're doing is they're trying to make sure that people don't have cookies on people forever, and they're protecting people's browsing information. So if you're a site, random site, somebody goes to your site, you drop a cookie on them, and then you have a cookie technically on their computer for the next 2 years. Safari is like, if you haven't engaged with them, that's probably not a pretty relevant cookie. What we're going to start doing is flushing those cookies. So with pixel data, it has actually, and that's, remember, go back to vendors versus Google Analytics. Pixel data it actually causes a lot of issues because they flush them pretty darn quickly. So within a couple of days, up to a 30-day date range, but it depends on if they continuously engage with your site. It's a different time period, and if they actually don't engage with your site, then it can get flushed as soon as 24 hours. So that can cause any issues if any of your e-commerce managers and you notice that any of your vendors just dropped off with their pixel. Could be because of Safari. It's not the biggest source of traffic. Still, PC wins, but just know it is affecting the data, and depending on your client demographic, it could actually, or your actual demographic, it could be more effective than less effective to you. But let's go back to our example. So let's say this person is one person, right? And I will go ahead and put this out there as a complication I probably shouldn't say. This actually could be the same person, right? They might have bought once, they clicked organic, clicked email, and then later they clicked on a paid search ad and bought again. Google Analytics is just reporting for that transaction what's the full run of what happened. So paths can contain other paths. This can be the same user, just so you guys are aware. That's kind of a weird one. Let's just pretend like it's not. So in this instance, when we're going back to session attribution, right, this is not a new session purchase, right? Because clearly they've interacted 3 times. However, if this is the first touch point that person's had on the site, this is a new user purchase, right? So a thing that gets a little bit complicated if you're trying to evaluate your sources and say, hey, these are new percentage sessions, they've never been to the site. Well, understand that just because they have been to the site doesn't mean that they're not a new user. They could have very well been 3 times to the site for the first time ever in a period, and that's why it's showing up as new sessions. So going back, it's a little bit complicated, but hopefully that does some justice to why to look at new users. It's a lot easier to look at new sessions. I'm going to be completely honest with you. New user percentage doesn't actually get calculated in Google Analytics, so all you can do is create a custom report where you look at new users, and then calculate new users, and then mathematically calculate what the percentage is. It's the most accurate way, and I've seen it get skewed pretty hard, just because, like I said in the last example, email was technically an existing session purchase, and you had 2 existing sessions and 1 new session. And so your percentage of total new sessions was only 33%, but technically that was 100% new user sessions. So it can really skew your data depending on how you're looking at it. So, and why this is important is it allows advanced conversations of brand versus non-brands, drivers and closers. Am I adding additional people to my business? What channels are doing that? Aligning business goals with profit margins, all that fun stuff, which is a completely different conversation. But that's actually it. Questions? Sorry, a little bit of information overload.
That's super insightful, awesome.
Cool. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned like different attribution models, and had a handful of examples over the years where folks would adjust things like email and like whether or not it's like first click or last touch. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience with email has been and what you typically consider it as?
Yeah, it's a good question. I personally I operate off of a kind of weird model. My model is I want to keep everything consistently in one model, which is usually last non-direct for reporting purposes. But if I'm evaluating whether that channel is working or not, each one might have its own customized model. So for example, non-branded search, I might use a first click to evaluate whether that channel is effective and calculate out mathematically what level I should be shooting for a return in that, and then understand that when I report it, I'll have supplement data with first click to say, yes, we're getting a 0.2, it looks bad, but we're leaving all this traffic, here's the extra lifetime value that we're using, blah, blah, blah. So for me, email is a tricky one because it is oddly enough closer a lot of the time, but it's also an opener. I think the biggest thing for email for me is segmenting out campaign types. A lot of people group it all together, and what you have is password forgot and shopping cart abandoned stuff going out. At the same time, you have very valuable, engaging emails, and then you just lump it all together and take credit. Paid search, notoriously bad. Brand and non-brand, people just lump everything together. They're like, look how awesome it's doing. You're like, well, kind of. If you separate them out, this is actually not awesome, and that's not awesome. But if you include them together, they look awesome. So I would probably go with that type of model, is more of evaluating the email type. And if it is an email that is kind of re-engaging longer users, I definitely would compare the two between first and last. Any other questions?
Do you find yourself using like assisted conversions a lot, being a logical position, trying to show the relationship, within context of this initial traffic came from paid or organic versus what actually closed it, just justify traffic sources?
Yeah, I do use assisted conversions. The tricky part that is challenging, I think, in general for everybody, let's see if I can go back to this, is, oops, somewhere back here. I lost slides. So the tricky part that is challenging to think of is how much does this get value, right? It's very apparent that this has value because it introduced it, and also very apparent that this had value because it closed it, but this middle touch point or middle touch points are always challenging because it can be an amount of time. So this might have happened over a 30-day time period, right? It could happen over a 1-day time period. So understanding those touch points is tricky. I do like using assisted conversions to show extra value. My favorite to start is first to last to evaluate the channel, and then understand that assisted conversions add extra value. And if we're looking at cutting things off or not cutting things off, if you're looking at the fact it's driving a lot of other assisted value, then that would kind of be the determinant. I wouldn't say it's like 50% credit. For me, it's like a nudge either way. I've got my first, I got my last, and then if it's on the borderline with those two and it's driving a lot of assisted, great. If it's like doing terrible and it's driving a fair amount of assisted, probably doing terrible. Let's see if we drop this out, if it actually makes a difference in the long side. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
However, be careful when you're using Google Analytics. There's a report, I don't know if anyone's used it, it's the assisted conversions report. It shows first to last and then assisted conversions. Those ratios actually use true last click, don't know why. So it doesn't match up with anything else because it's actually counting direct traffic if it's last. These would all get credit, so your ratios are all off if you do first to last. So that's why I like to go back to the actual attribution model to look at first to last, because it's a little bit more accurate factoring in direct traffic. Yes?
The new version of Safari that's clearing the cookies very soon after you're visiting it. When did that happen?
It happened, I want to say, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
Maybe a little longer.
Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks ago, somewhere in there. Google Analytics, it for now isn't affected. We did kind of confirm that, but pixel data can definitely be affected.
Specifically with like iOS 11 or the newest version of OS 10.
Yeah, and it would be something where you could probably pretty easily figure out how affected you are by just going into devices in Google Analytics or iOS, or not iOS, browsers, is that what it is, and Google Analytics, and just checking if you have a really high percentage of Safari, if a lot of people are using pixels, then probably should look into it a little bit more. Otherwise, Google Analytics is the source of truth. Unfortunately, it didn't break there, so you can at least rely on that in the meantime.
It was somewhat opening Pandora's box, but obviously a lot of people are using a lot of different devices over the course of their day or their interaction with a site over the course of a week or a month.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on actually tracking that effectively? It's somewhat of a leading question, but
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess I have two answers for this. Someday, and someday soon, Google Analytics will actually bake that in. They've been working on it for a long time. There were a number of alpha and betas that premiums and stuff, they used to do that type of stuff, and it's, some of those are still out there. And with all of the other things they're doing on the AdWords platform, it's definitely something that they're working on. So that will be the answer in the long term. In the short term, personally, I like directional data. A lot of pixel data from different vendors is great. Facebook, AdWords, who else? Criteo, all sorts of vendors are reporting it cross-device data. And the nice thing that a lot of times they report it separately and you can use it directionally. I take it with like store visits data, right? I use it directionally to create a percentage that helps me evaluate that channel. So if I'm seeing that cross-device is happening like crazy inside, paid search, in the branded campaigns, great. If it's adding extra 15%, maybe I'll look at evaluating that. Really, I look for the channels that I want that behavior to be happening and that drive extra value. So for me, it's more non-branded channels, Facebook, prospecting. If I'm doing remarketing, I'm probably entirely ignoring it because it's not as valuable because you're following them around. So it makes sense that they're showing the different devices. But I at least start using it directionally and say, let's give 15% extra credit on mobile devices and see, or whatever it is, and see how that changes our overall revenue and know that the feature is coming, hopefully soon, and we'll have that information. Yes?
Curious to hear your perspective on event tracking as it pertains to micro conversions.
Yes.
Obviously, you want to make sure you have your macros all set and they're firing correctly, but what's your take on setting events for things that lead up to a specific conversion?
Yeah, very good question. Event tracking is magic and it's awesome when you can set it up. I love event tracking. For anyone that doesn't know what event tracking is, you can basically add little pieces of JavaScript to different actions on the website. And when people click on videos, they click on buttons, all sorts of stuff, you can track that. Google will track that as a goal, or you can set up a goal and track it as an event. And it's a great way to track everything. Macros to get extra, micros to get, one of the two, micros to get extra credit. For example, YouTube clicks, if you have videos on your site, and you can tag them with that type of tracking. That way you can figure out there's more value or more engagement. It really helps with sources that don't lead to sales and last on, and you're like, this is upper funnel, it should be driving stuff. It's pretty good engagement on the site. How should I cut this off? Is it doing anything? I think macros are a stellar way to say it's leading to email signups. People are watching the videos. There's value in that. Anyone that has tracking that's impossible on sites usually can use buttons and just have them fire when they click buttons, which is fantastic as well. So I love it. How are you leveraging it?
Well, we use Google Analytics. So we actually are an analytics company. So
Nice.
specifically, we have a product that's similar to Google Analytics, but it's entirely event-based. So you go in top to bottom, instrument events on everything in your site, and then that gives you, I would say, a lot of insight into kind of user behavior.
Yeah.
Instead of this is much easier to use, I would say,
Yeah.
in a sense. But with when you're logging each individual action, you can really go in depth and say users from this traffic source viewed these 3 pages, left, came back 3 days later, engaged with these content mediums, and then made a purchase.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like there's the event side and then there's the page view side, which are both valuable. But I think when you bring them together, it's when you get the real holistic picture.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And event tracking is fantastic if you can get that and you can measure that. I know also there are a couple of other platforms that really are more event-based, and they're great for website developers too, because this Google Analytics, let's be honest, is designed for marketers. It's fantastic, marketers and business people. Reports everything well, gives credit, does all this, plugs into all sorts of different stuff. Web guys in general need a lot more nitty-gritties typically, and so you either have to come out with a complex event-based system or invest in one of these other areas. And I would say that you're spot on. There's a ton of value in that. Cool. Any other questions?
Wow, thank you.
Cool.